Welcome back to Faisal Khan. So, I need to talk to you about something pretty significant that's happening right now between Canada, the United States, and China. And honestly, it's getting messy. Let me break this down for you. The tweet that started it all. So this past Saturday, President Trump woke up and decided to fire off a social media post threatening new tariffs on Canada. Now that alone isn't exactly shocking anymore, right? But here's where it gets interesting. In that post, he called Prime Minister Mark Carney. Wait for it. Governor Carney. Yeah, governor. See, Trump has been doing this thing since last year where he calls Canada America's 51st state and refers to their leader as a governor. It's his way of saying Canada isn't really independent, that it exists only because America allows it to exist. In his exact words in that post, he said if Carney thinks he's going to make Canada a drop-off port for China to send goods and products into the United States, he's sorely mistaken. Now, why would he say that? What's Canada doing with China that's got Trump so worked up? Okay, so here's the backstory. Just earlier this month, Prime Minister Carney struck a deal with China. A pretty big one, actually. Remember back in 2024, when both the US and Canada slapped massive tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles, like 100% tariffs. The argument was that China was flooding the market with cheap EVs and making it impossible for American and Canadian car companies to compete. Well, Canada just broke ranks. Under this new deal, Canada is dropping those tariffs from a 100% all the way down to just 6.1%. They're going to let in about 49,000 Chinese EVs per year to start, and that number could grow to 70,000 in 5 years. In exchange, China is cutting tariffs on Canadian canola seeds from a whopping 84% down to around 15%. They're also removing tariffs on Canadian lobsters, crabs, peas, and canola meal, at least until the end of the year. Oh, and Chinese tourists won't need visas to visit Canada anymore. So basically, Canada said, you know what? We'll buy your cars. You buy our food. And that did not sit well with Washington. Now, to really understand why this is such a big deal, you need to know where things stood between Trump and Canada before this. When Trump came back to office, one of the first things he did was put new tariffs on Canadian goods. 35% on anything not covered by their existing free trade agreement. That agreement, by the way, is currently under mandatory review, so nobody even knows what's going to happen with it. Canada's economy is deeply tied to the United States. We're talking about their largest trading partner by far. So when Trump started squeezing them with tariffs, it hurt. A lot. In Canada's car industry, it was already struggling because of all this. So when Professor Gal Raz from Western University, he's an expert on EV supply chains, was asked about this deal, you know what he said? He said, the US has really put Canada in a corner. That's the reality. Canada didn't just wake up one day and decide to cozy up to China for fun. They're doing it because they feel like they have no other choice. Now, Prime Minister Carney, he's been pretty direct about all this. When someone asked him why Canada is suddenly giving China access to their car market, he said, and I'm quoting here, "We take the world as it is, not as we wish it to be." That's a pretty loaded statement, right? He's basically saying, look, I don't love the situation either, but this is reality. We have to deal with it. And here's where it gets really pointed. Carney actually said that Canada's relationship with China has become more predictable than its relationship with the United States under Trump. Think about that for a second. China, which Carney himself called the biggest security threat facing Canada less than a year ago, is now, in his words, more predictable than America. He also said this deal sets Canada up well for the New World Order. New World Order. Those are big words. Things really escalated this week at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. Carney gave a speech there, And he didn't mention Trump by name, but he warned about a rupture in the US-led global order. Everyone knew exactly who he was talking about. And Trump, he was not happy. When Trump gave his own speech right after Carney's, he fired back with this gem: Canada lives because of the United States. Ouch. But Carney didn't back down. The next day, he responded, Canada and the US have built a remarkable partnership over many decades. But Canada doesn't live because of the United States. Canada thrives because we are Canadians. I mean, that's about as diplomatic as a burn gets. So what did Trump do next? Well, on Friday, he kicked Canada off something called the Board of Peace. This is a new international organization Trump is setting up, supposedly for resolving global conflicts. Canada was invited, and then uninvited, just like that. Trump also went after Canada in another social media post, criticizing them for being against the Golden Dome being built over Greenland. That's his anti-missile shield project. And for doing business with China. So now you've got the full picture. Trade tensions, personal insults, diplomatic snubs. It's all piling up. But here's where it gets a little ironic, and I think this is worth pointing out. Just this Tuesday, Trump himself was speaking at the Detroit Economic Club. And you know what he said about Chinese investment? He said, if they want to come in and build a plant, and hire you, and hire your friends and your neighbors, that's great. I love that. Let China come in. Let Japan come in. So, wait. China can build plants in America, but Canada can't buy their cars? And get this, Trump is actually heading to Beijing in April to meet with President Xi Jinping. He's even invited Xi for a state visit to Washington. So while he's blasting Canada for dealing with China, he's also setting up his own meetings with the Chinese president. Look, I'm not here to tell you what to think about that. I'm just laying out the facts. You can draw your own conclusions. So what does all this actually mean going forward? Well, according to Eric Miller, he's a trade advisor based in Washington. What Carney's doing here is basically declaring that Canada has agency, that it's not just going to sit around waiting for America to dictate terms. As Miller put it, the Prime Minister is saying, essentially, that Canada has agency too, and that it's not going to just sit and wait for the United States. But there are real risks here. Professor Raz warned that this deal could hurt Canadian car manufacturers if the government doesn't do more to protect the domestic industry. Sure, Canadian consumers might get cheaper EVs. China makes some of the most affordable electric vehicles in the world. But what happens to Canadian jobs? And then there's the bigger question. What happens to the Canada-US relationship? For decades, these two countries have been incredibly close allies. Integrated economies, shared borders, cultural ties. You name it. But right now, things are as tense as they've been in a long time. You know, this isn't just about tariffs and trade deals. This is about the global order shifting. Trump's push to take control of Greenland, his comments about NATO, his America First approach. It's putting him at odds with traditional allies. Not just Canada, but European leaders too. And countries like Canada are starting to ask themselves, if we can't rely on the US, who can we rely on? For Carney, the answer, at least partially, seems to be ourselves. And maybe, when it makes sense, China. Is that the right call? I don't know. History will judge that. But what I do know is that the rules that have governed North American trade for decades, they're being rewritten right now, in real time, and we're all watching it happen. So that's where we are. Trump is threatening new tariffs. Carney is cutting deals with Beijing. Insults are flying at international forums. And the relationship between two of the world's closest allies is more uncertain than it's been in generations. I'll keep watching the story and bring you updates as things develop. Because honestly, I don't think we've seen the end of this. Not by a long shot. Thanks for watching, everyone. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this. Is Canada making the right move? Is Trump overreacting? Or is this just the new normal? See you next time.